The epic battles that saved Japan is a compelling tale of resilience, strategy, and nature's intervention. The two Mongol invasions of Japan in 1274 and 1281, led by Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, were momentous events in medieval history. These invasions, which pitted the famed samurai warriors against the vast and fearsome Mongol Empire, ultimately helped define Japan's national identity. In the 13th century, Kublai Khan had established the Yuan dynasty in China and set his sights on expanding his empire. Japan, an island nation that had enjoyed centuries of relative isolation, became a target for the Mongol conquest. In 1266, Kublai sent emissaries demanding Japan's submission, but the shogunate rejected these overtures, prompting the Mongol ruler to take aggressive action. At this time, Japan was under the control of the Kamakura shogunate, a military government led by the shogun and supported by the powerful warrior class, the samurai. The emperor in Kyoto held symbolic power, while the real authority rested with the shogunate based in Kamakura. Japan had been relatively peaceful, isolated from foreign influence for centuries, and had never faced an external invasion of the magnitude that the Mongols were preparing. Kublai Khan saw Japan as a potential tributary state, much like Korea and China, and in 1266, he sent his first diplomatic mission to Japan, demanding that the country submit to Mongol rule. The Kamakura shogunate, suspicious of foreign powers and confident in Japan's natural defenses as an island nation, ignored these demands. In response, Kublai sent 5 more envoys over the next few years, each time escalating his tone. The Japanese court rebuffed these efforts, which only solidified Kublai's resolve to invade. In November 1274, Kublai Khan launched his first invasion of Japan, sending a combined force of Mongol, Chinese, and Korean soldiers across the sea. The invasion force was said to number around 23,000 to 40,000 men, transported on more than 900 ships. This massive armada sailed towards Kyushu, the southernmost of Japan's major islands, targeting the city of Hakata, modern-day Fukuoka. The samurai had never faced an enemy quite like the Mongols, who brought with them new tactics, weaponry, and battle strategies. The Mongol military was highly organized, disciplined, and known for their use of psychological warfare. They employed complex formations, archery from horseback, and a frightening arsenal that included explosives, poison gas, and advanced siege tactics. On the other side, the Japanese samurai were traditionally accustomed to one-on-one combat, where individual valor and skill were showcased. Their code of honor, Bushido, emphasized bravery and personal duels with enemies of equal standing. The Mongols, in contrast, fought in coordinated groups with an emphasis on overwhelming force and ranged attacks, which caught the samurai off guard. The Mongols initially landed at Hakata Bay, and their forces quickly began to press inland. The Japanese defenders, numbering around 10,000, attempted to hold them off but were overwhelmed by the sheer force of the invaders' artillery, arrows, and bombs, likely early forms of gunpowder weapons that startled the Japanese. The Mongols' swift, highly mobile cavalry units, combined with coordinated infantry attacks, proved lethal. The samurai were unable to engage the enemy in the hand-to-hand combat they were accustomed to, and Japanese records describe the confusion and fear generated by the Mongols' use of new and unfamiliar tactics. However, despite these early setbacks, the Japanese defenders fought fiercely. Samurai warriors, including the local leaders of Kyushu, resisted with a combination of surprise night raids, guerrilla tactics, and ambushes. The terrain of Japan, with its dense forests and mountainous landscapes, favored the defenders who knew the land well. As the Mongols began to consolidate their gains, a powerful force intervened: the weather. A sudden and unexpected storm struck the Mongol fleet as it lay anchored in Hakata Bay. The typhoon, later referred to as the Kamikaze, divine wind, devastated the Mongol ships, sinking many of them and forcing the remaining soldiers to retreat in disarray. Thousands of invaders drowned and the survivors fled back to Korea. Japan had been spared for now. Determined to conquer Japan, Kublai Khan did not give up after his first defeat. 7 years later, in 1281, he assembled an even larger invasion force, this time split into two armies. The Eastern Army consisted of about 40,000 men from Korea and northern China, while the Southern Army, departing from southern China, was comprised of around 100,000 soldiers. This fleet, numbering around 4,400 ships, was one of the largest armadas in pre-modern history. The Japanese, having learned from the first invasion, prepared for this second assault with great care. The Kamakura shogunate ordered the construction of extensive coastal defenses along the shores of Hakata Bay. A stone wall, roughly 20 kilometers long, was built along the bay's perimeter to prevent another landing, and the samurai were ready to meet the invaders with increased numbers and better organization. The first Mongol fleet arrived at the shores of Kyushu in June 1281. They were met by fierce resistance from the Japanese defenders, who employed hit-and-run tactics to prevent the Mongols from establishing a foothold. Unlike the first invasion, the samurai took to the seas in small boats, launching daring night raids on Mongol ships, often boarding and engaging in brutal close-quarters combat. The stone walls along the coast also forced the Mongols to conduct drawn-out naval operations, which stalled their invasion plans. For nearly 2 months, the Mongols tried to break through the Japanese defenses, but the stalemate continued. The second Mongol fleet, the much larger Southern Army, arrived in August, but by this time, the Japanese defenses were holding strong. Unable to land their full forces, the Mongols grew increasingly frustrated. In August 1281, just as the Mongols were preparing for a final assault to overwhelm the Japanese defenses, nature once again came to Japan's aid. A second powerful typhoon struck the Mongol fleet, devastating their ships anchored off the coast. The storm, even more destructive than the one in 1274, shattered the Mongol armada. Ships were blown apart, and tens of thousands of soldiers drowned. The few survivors who made it to shore were quickly overwhelmed by the samurai, who pursued and eliminated the remaining invaders. The Japanese credited their victory to divine intervention, calling the typhoon Kamikaze, divine wind. The belief that the gods had protected Japan from foreign invasion would become a powerful part of Japanese mythology and national identity. The Mongol invasions of Japan marked one of the few major defeats for the Mongol Empire, which had previously conquered vast swathes of Eurasia. Kublai Khan never attempted another invasion, and the Mongol Empire gradually began to decline. For Japan, the victory reinforced the strength of the samurai class and the authority of the Kamakura shogunate, which credited their military efforts as well as divine favor for repelling the invaders. The invasions also left a lasting cultural legacy. The Kamikaze wines became a symbol of Japan's divine protection, and the samurai emerged from the conflict with an enhanced reputation for bravery and skill. These events would later be romanticized in Japanese literature, art, and culture, embedding the narrative of heroic defense against overwhelming odds into the national consciousness. The Mongol invasions also spurred developments in Japanese military tactics, fortifications, and naval warfare. The stone walls at Hakata Bay, for example, were a direct result of the Mongol threat, and these defensive measures would shape Japanese military strategy in the centuries to come. In conclusion, the epic battles between the Mongols and samurai were more than just military encounters. They were defining moments that shaped the future of Japan. The resilience of the samurai, combined with the fortuitous intervention of the Kamikaze winds, saved Japan from foreign domination and preserved the island nation's sovereignty during one of the most dangerous periods in its history.